Most people believe financial danger begins when they lose their job. It doesn't. The real danger begins the day they become comfortable inside it. Comfort is the most expensive illusion ever sold to the middle class. It arrives quietly. Your paycheck comes on time. Your routine stabilizes. You learn your tasks. Your coworkers know your name. Nothing feels urgent anymore. And that is precisely the moment growth stops. Because the human brain confuses familiarity with safety. You wake up at the same time. You follow the same route. You solve the same problems. Weeks turn into months, months into years, and something invisible begins happening beneath the surface. Your income moves slowly upward, but your dependence grows much faster. You are not building freedom. You are building adaptation. And adaptation is dangerous when the environment changes faster than you do. The modern economy does not reward loyalty. It rewards leverage. Companies restructure. Industries disappear. Entire professions are replaced by software without warning. Yet millions of people still operate under a rule that stopped being true decades ago. Work hard, stay loyal, and you will be taken care of. That promise belonged to a different era, an era of pensions, long-term employment, and predictable growth. Today the system has changed, but human expectations have not. This creates the first invisible trap: delayed awareness. Nothing feels wrong while everything is slowly becoming fragile. Imagine standing on a frozen lake in early spring. The surface still looks solid. You can walk normally. You feel safe because nothing has cracked yet. But underneath, the structure is melting. Every step is supported by thinner and thinner ice. Employment works the same way. As long as income continues, risk feels theoretical. But the moment income stops, reality arrives instantly. Bills do not pause. Rent does not negotiate. Time does not slow down while you figure things out. And here is the brutal truth few people accept. Your job is not your asset. Your job is someone else's asset. You are a line item on a spreadsheet designed to increase efficiency. When conditions change, efficiency demands adjustment, and adjustment rarely favors the employee. People believe effort guarantees security. But effort only guarantees exhaustion if it is applied in the wrong direction. You can spend 20 years becoming excellent at a role that the market no longer values. Skill without adaptability becomes obsolete faster than incompetence with flexibility. The world does not reward how hard you worked yesterday. It rewards how relevant you are today. This leads to the second trap: income addiction. A paycheck is powerful because it removes uncertainty. You do not need to think about survival every day. And while that sounds positive, it slowly weakens one critical ability: initiative. When survival is automatic, creativity declines. You stop asking difficult questions. You stop experimenting. You stop building alternatives. Why would you? The system works until it suddenly doesn't. Humans are incredibly adaptive creatures, but adaptation cuts both ways. The same mechanism that allows you to survive hardship also allows you to tolerate stagnation indefinitely. You learn to live within the structure provided to you. Your ambitions shrink to fit your schedule. Dreams become weekend thoughts instead of daily pursuits. Risk begins to feel irresponsible instead of necessary. And years pass. Then something strange happens around midlife. You realize your expenses require your current income level. Your responsibilities depend on stability. Your margin for experimentation has disappeared. You are no longer choosing your job. Your job is choosing you. This is the employee trap in its purest form, not physical restriction, but financial gravity. The more stable your life becomes, the harder it is to change direction. Many people assume wealth comes from earning more money, but income alone rarely creates freedom. Income creates lifestyle expansion first. Humans naturally upgrade comfort faster than they build resilience. A larger apartment, better vacations, new subscriptions, small conveniences that feel harmless individually but collectively transform flexibility into obligation. Each upgrade quietly increases the minimum amount of money required to feel normal. And once your normal becomes expensive, fear enters the equation. Fear of losing status, fear of stepping backward, fear of uncertainty. Fear is incredibly effective at maintaining systems. You begin optimizing for preservation instead of growth. You avoid opportunities that seem unstable even if they offer long-term independence. You reject experiments because failure feels too costly. You prioritize predictability over possibility. And slowly, without noticing, you exchange potential for stability. The tragedy is not that employment exists. Employment can be useful. It can teach discipline, structure, and skills. The tragedy occurs when employment becomes permanent identity instead of temporary strategy, because identity shapes behavior. If you believe you are an employee, you look for instructions. If you believe you are an owner, you look for solutions. One mindset waits for permission, the other creates options. The difference between these two mental models compounds over decades. Owners think in systems. Employees think in tasks. Owners ask how value is created. Employees ask how performance is measured. Owners build assets that produce outcomes repeatedly. Employees produce outcomes once and must repeat effort endlessly. Neither approach is morally superior, but only one creates independence. And independence is ultimately what every person seeks, even if they never say it aloud. People do not dream about money itself. They dream about control over time, energy, and decisions. Yet most financial advice focuses entirely on saving instead of building. Saving alone cannot overcome structural dependency. You cannot save your way out of a system that requires continuous participation to survive. Savings buy time, assets buy freedom. This distinction changes everything. When income depends entirely on effort, life becomes a race against aging. Energy declines, opportunities narrow, risk tolerance decreases. The same work that felt easy at 30 feels heavy at 50, but expenses rarely decline at the same speed. This creates pressure, not sudden, but constant, and pressure forces decisions. Some people respond by working longer hours, others chase promotions, many simply endure. Very few step back and question the structure itself, because questioning the structure feels uncomfortable. It challenges years of decisions, habits, and identity. But discomfort is often the first signal of awareness. The realization arrives quietly. Stability without ownership is temporary. You begin to notice people who are not trading time directly for income. Business owners, investors, creators, individuals whose earnings continue even when they are not actively working. At first, it looks like luck, then privilege. Eventually, if you observe carefully, you recognize a pattern. They stopped optimizing for income alone. They optimized for leverage. Leverage is the ability to multiply effort beyond time. Technology is leverage. Capital is leverage. Knowledge distributed at scale is leverage. Systems that function without constant supervision are leverage. Leverage changes the relationship between work and reward. Instead of repeating effort endlessly, effort accumulates. Instead of starting from zero each month, progress compounds. And compounding is the force most employees never fully experience because their output resets daily. Every morning begins at zero again. New tasks, new deadlines, new hours exchanged. The system is efficient but unforgiving. It rewards consistency but rarely produces escape. This is why many people reach later stages of life, financially stable but emotionally exhausted. They followed every rule, worked responsibly, avoided major mistakes, yet freedom still feels distant. Not because they failed, but because they optimized for the wrong objective. They pursued security instead of resilience. Security depends on external stability. Resilience depends on internal adaptability. And in a world that changes faster every decade, resilience always outperforms security in the long run. The shift does not happen overnight. It begins with awareness. Understanding that your current structure is not permanent allows you to think differently about effort. Instead of asking, "How do I earn more this year?" the question becomes, "How do I reduce dependence over time?" That question changes behavior immediately. You begin learning skills that scale beyond location. You study how money moves, instead of only how money is earned. You observe systems instead of tasks. You start small experiments that may fail but teach independence. Progress feels slow at first, because independence grows quietly before it becomes visible. But something important happens internally. Fear begins to weaken, not because risk disappears, but because options appear. And options are the true opposite of dependency. Most people never reach this stage because the comfort of predictability is powerful. Routine sedates ambition. Familiarity dulls urgency. Years pass smoothly enough that change feels unnecessary, until change becomes unavoidable. Economic shifts, layoffs, health events, industry disruption. The trigger varies, but the outcome is the same. People who relied entirely on one income source suddenly must adapt under pressure instead of preparation. And adaptation under pressure is always harder than adaptation by choice. The lesson is not to reject employment. The lesson is to understand its limits. A job can fund your transition, but it cannot be the destination, because eventually every system asks the same question. What happens if the paycheck stops? And the answer to that question determines whether you have built a life or rented one. At some point, the question stops being theoretical. You begin to notice small signals that something is changing. A new technology replaces tasks that once required entire teams. Younger employees arrive already fluent in tools you barely understand. Meetings become shorter, decisions faster, expectations higher. Nothing dramatic happens, yet the environment feels different. The ground is moving, but slowly enough that most people ignore it. Humans are remarkably skilled at normalizing gradual change. We adjust expectations instead of confronting reality. We tell ourselves things will stabilize. We assume experience will protect us. But experience only has value when the rules remain the same. When the rules change, adaptability becomes more valuable than seniority. And this introduces the next hidden danger: delayed vulnerability. Early in your career, losing a job is inconvenient but survivable. Expenses are lower, responsibilities are lighter, time feels abundant. But later in life the equation reverses. Obligations grow while flexibility shrinks. Mortgages, family needs, lifestyle commitments, all of them depend on continuity. The same event that would have been manageable at 30 becomes destabilizing at 50, not because you are weaker, because the system around you has tightened. Many people respond to this realization by working harder. They become more available, more reliable, more indispensable. But indispensability is often an illusion. Organizations optimize constantly. Efficiency rewards replacement, not loyalty. You may be respected, you may be appreciated, but appreciation does not appear on a balance sheet, and balance sheets make decisions. This is where the psychological conflict begins. You sense risk, yet change feels dangerous. Staying feels safer than moving, even when staying quietly increases long-term exposure. The mind prefers familiar discomfort over unfamiliar uncertainty. It is a survival mechanism inherited from a world where change meant physical danger. But in modern economic life, refusing to adapt creates the greater threat, because dependency compounds. Every year spent relying on a single income stream strengthens habits that make diversification harder. You become specialized in one environment. Your network narrows. Your confidence outside your role weakens. You begin to underestimate your ability to operate independently. This loss of perceived capability is more damaging than any financial limitation. People rarely fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because they no longer believe change is possible, and belief shapes action long before results appear. Meanwhile, time continues moving forward with mathematical indifference. There is a concept investors understand deeply, but individuals rarely apply to their own lives: concentration risk. Putting all capital into one asset is dangerous because outcomes become fragile. Yet millions of people concentrate their entire economic survival into one employer, one industry, one skill set. It feels efficient, until efficiency meets disruption. The modern economy rewards optionality, the ability to pivot quickly when conditions change. Optionality comes from diversification of capability, income, and knowledge. It is not built suddenly. It is constructed gradually through curiosity and experimentation. Small projects started after work, skills learned without immediate payoff, ideas explored before they are necessary. These actions seem insignificant in the moment, but they create alternative paths, and alternatives reduce fear. Fear thrives when there is only one way forward. The moment multiple paths exist, pressure decreases. This is why ownership changes psychology as much as finances. Even small forms of ownership, investments, side ventures, intellectual property, scalable skills, alter how you perceive risk. You stop viewing employment as survival and start viewing it as one component of a broader system. Your relationship with work shifts. You are no longer protecting a single lifeline. You are strengthening a network. And networks are resilient. Resilience does not mean avoiding failure. It means failure in one area does not collapse everything else. A diversified structure absorbs shocks. Income fluctuates, but stability remains. Ironically, this makes you better at your job as well. When fear decreases, performance improves, creativity returns. You take smarter risks because survival no longer depends on immediate approval. Confidence rooted in options feels different from confidence rooted in necessity. One expands possibility, the other defends position. Over time, another realization emerges. The goal was never to escape effort. Effort is unavoidable. The real goal is alignment, ensuring effort builds something that lasts beyond the moment it is performed. Most employees experience linear effort. Work completed today produces income today and disappears tomorrow. Ownership introduces accumulated effort. Work performed once continues producing value repeatedly. This difference appears small at first but becomes enormous over decades. Linear effort exhausts. Accumulated effort liberates. The challenge is psychological patience. Early stages of building leverage feel inefficient compared to a predictable salary. Results are uncertain. Progress is uneven. Many people abandon the process because comparison favors immediate income, but compounding is invisible before it becomes obvious. The same principle that grows investments grows independence. Small advantages, repeated consistently, eventually cross a threshold where momentum replaces effort. And when that threshold arrives, fear changes direction. Instead of fearing uncertainty, you begin fearing stagnation. You recognize that remaining dependent carries its own risk. The risk of reaching later years with limited adaptability. The risk of discovering too late that stability was conditional. The risk of realizing you built expertise inside a structure that no longer exists. This awareness does not require dramatic action. It requires intentional direction. You begin allocating time differently. Some effort maintains current stability. Some effort builds future flexibility. Gradually the balance shifts. Income sources diversify. Skills expand. Confidence grows from evidence rather than hope. And something subtle happens internally. Identity evolves. You stop defining yourself by role and start defining yourself by capability. Instead of saying I work as, you begin thinking I can create, I can solve, I can build. The difference sounds small but fundamentally alters behavior. Capability travels with you. Titles do not. Eventually you understand a truth that was hidden in plain sight from the beginning. Freedom is not a moment. It is a structure built slowly through decisions that prioritized resilience over comfort, adaptability over predictability, ownership over dependency. The people who appear suddenly successful rarely changed overnight. They spent years quietly constructing systems that reduced reliance on any single outcome. When change arrived, and change always arrives, they were prepared. Preparation does not eliminate uncertainty, but it transforms uncertainty from threat into opportunity. Because opportunity is simply uncertainty viewed from a position of strength, and strength comes from options. In the end, the question is not whether employment is good or bad. The real question is whether your life can continue functioning without it. If the answer is no, then stability is temporary by definition. True security is not guaranteed income. It is the ability to generate income under changing conditions. It is adaptability made practical. It is knowing that if one door closes, you have already built others. Most people wait for certainty before they begin building alternatives, but certainty never arrives. The future remains unpredictable, regardless of preparation. The difference is whether unpredictability meets fragility or resilience. One leads to panic, the other leads to possibility. And that distinction determines how the next chapter of your life unfolds. Because eventually everyone faces the same moment, a shift they did not plan, a change they did not expect, a realization that the structure they trusted was never permanent. When that moment comes, those who built options step forward. Those who relied on stability search for it again. The outcome was never decided in that moment. It was decided years earlier, quietly, through small choices repeated consistently. Choices about how effort was used, whether time was only spent, or also invested, whether comfort was protected, or gradually replaced with capability. The future belongs to those who prepare before necessity forces them to. And the path toward independence always begins the same way, not with escape, but with awareness. The awareness that your life should not depend on a single permission slip. And once you truly understand that, you stop drifting with the system and start steering your own direction.